We've said it once and we'll say it again. Showing up online as an actor is a non-negotiable. Having an updated website and a current resume is crucial in today's audition landscape. Today we're talking about what you need on both and why.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Cortman Westfall, a Broadway music director, voice coach, and tenured professor in the musical theater department at the University of Michigan.
And I'm Chelsea Wilson, a performer turned voice teacher to Broadway stars and vocal coach on Broadway productions like The Phantom of the Opera, School of Rock, and more.
Here on the Broadway Vocal Coach podcast, you can expect real talk about the business, practical advice, and constant encouragement.
We believe there's space for every artist in this industry. All you need is the right support. So consider us your two-woman hype team. Welcome to the Broadway Vocal Coach podcast, where we help musical theater performers get unstuck and take the next step in their careers. Recently, you sent me a DM or a text, Cynthia, that was like, I could talk about this all day when it came to websites and actors having websites. And you're like, I'm so frustrated about this. I don't remember what the circumstances were, but you were like, this drives me crazy. I could talk about this all day. And I was like, great, let's talk about it.
Wow.
Let's talk about it.
I was feeling
Do you remember what that was about?
I do remember what that was about. I get quite a few calls and texts and emails from people largely in New York, but actually literally all around the country and occasionally internationally, from people who are asking me for recommendations. So oftentimes someone will call me and be like, hey, we're still looking for this role or this character, or we're looking for this age of person, and can you help me out with a few more names? I get a lot of those kind of phone calls. And then sometimes I get calls that are like, hey, I just saw so-and-so, and I'm just wondering what else they sing. Like, I heard them do this sort of golden age thing, and I really need to know if they can sing rock pop, and we're not going to have a chance to call them back. And so when you get these kind of phone calls, obviously, I want to be able to send contact information back to those folks. I want to be able to send a couple video examples back to those folks. Sometimes I've sent like the Instagram handle to say, here are a bunch of videos that they've got on their Instagram. Other times I'm actively thinking, oh my gosh, please don't look at this person's Instagram. That's not going to look super professional. Please don't look at that. But it's amazing how often I want to recommend somebody and I literally can't find their contact information. If I can't find them online, if I can't find a website for them, then I can't find their phone number. I can't find their resume. I can't find some additional videos of them singing. So then sometimes I'll go over to YouTube. And if I can't find a video on YouTube, I might try their Instagram. If I can't find a couple videos on Instagram, I just give up. And it's amazing how often I have to actually give up. Their names just don't go on the list then of who I send on. You know, I like, oh, rats. I wish I could have included that person. They would have been really great to be seen. But if you don't have a website, then I can't see your resume. Then I can't get your contact number. And then sometimes on social media, it gets a little dicey about what you've got posted or not. So it makes it really hard to be recommended. And we all know that those connections can really be meaningful. And people do ask for recommendations amongst trusted folks in the business. And so it's great to have something online that we can easily be pointed to recommend.
Just really recently, I was looking up a couple folks and I just needed some really basic information about their kind of work experience. And they had a website, but it was kind of mysterious, like what their background was, like what their training was. It was kind of like nebulous information. And it didn't list their credits anywhere very explicitly. There was no link to download their resume. I couldn't download their headshot. Like there was nothing for me to get from that was like a tangible, really tangible information that I needed about a couple people. And I was so frustrated. I was just like, you have a website. Can you just list for me like the important highlights, you know, and let me download your resume. Like I want to see that information. It's important to what I'm doing with you, for you. And it was so frustrating. So I can only imagine for you in your situation where you're constantly being asked this, feeling frustrated that you honestly you're doing all you can to recommend fantastic people for jobs and they haven't helped themselves. They have not helped themselves and maybe they have no idea that they have unknowingly taken themselves out of the running because they aren't online. And I think the elephant in the room about this conversation is, and I can hear so many people, our clients, people I know, being like, I don't want to be online. I don't want to spend my life online. I don't want to have to do the whole rigmarole of social media. I don't want to, like, I don't want to do that. And I hear you. And yet, there is a way to do yourself the favor of having some online presence where you're proud of what you've put out online. You're in control of what's there as opposed to being unfindable, unknowable.
Yeah.
Having even just a one-page website for yourself as an actor is truly all you need. And we can talk about that. But just do yourself a favor and have something that's searchable and current about yourself on the internet. Let's end the podcast right there. I think that's all we need to say. The end.
The flip side of the folks who say, you know, I don't want to have that online presence are the folks who say, I don't want to have the online presence unless I have multiple headshots and lots of lifestyle shots. And I've got clips of
the
every
perfect
single
reel
possible,
and a dance
yes,
reel,
the perfect
and
reel, a dance reel, yes, the acting reel. I want all, and my resume has to be bigger. Right now, it doesn't have a lot of fancy stuff on it. I just want to wait until I get more stuff, or, you know, there's a million excuses of why people will procrastinate on a website. And my advice has always been done is better than perfect. Because the reality is you really only need a headshot, your resume, and a couple of clips of you doing the thing that you do. And that's really all you need. It doesn't need to be fancy. We just need to know how to get a hold of you. And it's a bonus feature if it can point us to a couple videos where we can see you doing the thing that you do.
Yeah, I would say there are just 3 things that you must have on your website. And this can be a one-page website, my friends. Do not go to the trouble of multiple pages and tabs and whatever. You don't need it. One page is all you need. And the information you need is contact info. A lot of people think, well, I have my agent listed. That's enough, right? And I've heard Cynthia talk about this many times before. For a lot of these kinds of gigs, like, I want to recommend you for this concert. It's happening in 4 days from now. You know, to go through your agent to get to you just to see if you're available is a hassle. And so just even having an email address that will personally reach you listed on your website or listed on your resume is a huge help to people who want and need to get in touch with you with opportunities or questions or whatever the case may be. So contact info, number 1. If you have an agent, if you have representation, sure, but contact info that reaches you directly. Number 2 is a downloadable headshot and resume. I think that's crucial because, again, in that scenario, like Cynthia's saying, if she can just download your resume, she can pass that along to whoever is looking for it. Being able to visually see that on there is awesome. And 3, some kind of media. That can be images and video. I think video is the most important thing. Just anything that's current. If you have ever made a self-tape for anything, put that up on that one website page. You know, just have something there so we get a sense of who you are and the kinds of things that you do. Hugely beneficial.
Yeah. I love your list of 3. I think it's brilliant. And I would say for the media portion of it, another thing that I will find people get hung up on a little bit is putting a full song up, and they feel like, I don't feel happy with any of my self-tapes of a full song. Take just a little bit. Take a 30-second clip of it. Take a 20-second clip of it. You can, again, don't let the perfection part of it hold you up. If there's a clip that you like, just use the clip. You don't have to use the full video if you don't love it, but I bet there's a piece of it that you like, and that's enough. You know, and then as you continue on, you can always trade it out. You can always swap things as you go, and you can always update your resume, and you can always swap out videos, but just get those basics up there.
Along those lines of like feeling like you've got to have the perfect reel, we talk about this a lot when people are doing their college auditions and putting together their pre-screens, but this totally relates to the professional world as well. People get really hung up on, I need the perfect lighting setup and I need a professional microphone, I need a professional camera, and I'm going to rent a studio and have a videographer come and tape these for me, and that's going to be my perfect reel. And if you have the resources to do that, amazing. Go for it. Why not? However, the only thing that tells me as someone watching this is that you had the resources to do that. It doesn't tell me that you're more committed to your craft. It doesn't tell me that you're more skilled or more talented. It literally just tells me that you had the money to go to that expense of putting that together in this, really beautiful way. But as long as you are well lit and we can see and hear you in a video, you could take that video on your iPhone. Like, truly, it doesn't matter. What matters is the performance that you're giving. What matters is that you feel like it's a good showcase of yourself, your voice, your skills, wherever you're at right now. It doesn't matter. The other stuff, it doesn't matter. People are booking amazing gigs all the time off of videos they made in their closet. Like, just don't worry about it. That's my advice.
Yep.
If you want to dive deeper into this topic of what you need on your website and more information about showing up online, if you go back to episode 16 of our podcast, we do a deep dive into all things online presence relating to being an actor and all of that. So this conversation, just zoom on back if you want to get deeper into this. The other thing I want to jump to today, Cynthia, that is related in like how people can find you and the information that you put out there into the world is your resume. What to include on your resume and what you don't need to include on your resume. And I think you've seen, I don't know, 1 million resumes in your lifetime. So do tell. Tell us what we need.
Yeah. Resumes. I'm kind of weirdly passionate about resumes. I don't know what that is, but I really love resumes. I love helping people with their resumes. A couple things about resumes. Contact information, obviously, your name. Some things we don't need that I still see people putting on a lot are things like hair color, eye color, and weight. And those are really things nobody needs to be putting on anymore. What you can do, a lot of folks will put a little kind of thumbnail headshot up in the corner of their resume. And now that headshots are in color, we really don't need to know your hair color and your eye color. We are literally seeing a color picture of you. That's sort of a relic of when headshots used to be in black and white. And maybe it mattered back then what your eye color or your hair color was. But today, really, you do not need to put your hair color, eye color, or weight on there. Height is still something people are often interested in. And I think because like in the Zoom age and the video age, it's really hard to tell whether someone's 4'10" or 6'5". It's, I'm often a surprise when people meet me in person and they go, "Oh, I've only seen you on Zoom. I had no idea you were 6 feet tall." So I do think height is helpful, especially when it comes to things like replacements for roles that, if it's a costume, some costumes have height requirements. So height is helpful to have, but weight, eye color, hair color, absolutely do not need to have. I would love to talk to you, Chelsea, about voice type. Because that one, to be honest, I frequently reach out to folks in the industry and casting and agents and managers to ask them thoughts on these various things, just so I'm staying as up to date as I can. And there is no real consensus on this one. Some people will use like a A3 to G5 kind of thing and just say the range. Some people will say like baritone or soprano/belter. And honestly, I think any of those seem to work. Like I said, there's no real consensus on what I hear from folks in the industry that they want to see there. All I would say is try to keep it as sort of open as possible and don't limit yourself. Let's say, for example, you put G5 as your high note. Well, does that count falsetto? What if it's a song that you can flip in and we can go to a higher range, but you're not going to maybe write that you can sing all the way up to the stratosphere because you're not going to count falsetto in your true range? That gets a little, I just always feel like keep it as open-ended as you can.
Yeah. And also everyone uses these words slightly differently,
Yeah.
So when you're saying belt to a D5 and then head voice to this note, or whatever the case may be. It's like you know what that means for your voice, but maybe different music directors or different casting directors are going to interpret that differently or maybe understand it differently. So I always wonder even how important it is to even include something like that. The thing that's more telling is, well, what shows are on your resume? Like, what roles have you
Yeah.
played?
Yeah.
Like, oh, this person's played Glinda and Anna. Okay, I know exactly like what this is like,
Although the flip side of that is, years ago, it used to be that women especially, it was like, you were either Barbara Cook or you were Ethel Merman. That was, those were the distinctions. You didn't
And
do
never the
both.
twain shall meet. Yes.
Exactly. Now we have like a Jessie Mueller. Well, how would you describe that? She's done everything from Carrie and Julie in Carousel to belting in Waitress, and I can get it for you wholesale. Those are wildly different voice qualities. So I think today it's almost expected that most singers have crossover between the more legit classical styles and the more contemporary and rock pop styles. So yeah, it gets really tricky.
Yeah, I think you're right. And do you think it would ever be not a good idea just to like leave that off? Or should you always say something?
I've actually seen quite a few people leave it off. Yeah, I've seen a lot of
Yeah.
people just not listed at all. And again, like you say, you can see it in the credits. You can see,
Yeah.
oh, they played Frank and Catch Me If You Can. Okay, that tells me they've got high tenor notes, So, yeah, don't think we have a consensus on this one. I think you have to sort of choose what fits best for you and how versatile you are in this moment and maybe like how kind of gutsy you are in terms of like, usually I sing to an F sharp, but on a good day a G, so I might just not say, I don't know. Like it sort of allows you to grow into something more when you don't pin it down. But that one, yeah, I don't think we have consensus on that.
Yeah. I do think, however, it is helpful to know what your note range is. I actually get a lot of messages from my students that are like, I need to write in this submission what my range is, or I'm coming in for a callback and the music director asked me what my range was. Can you tell me? So if you've got a voice teacher or a voice coach that you can consult with and get that specific note range, if that's not something you're comfortable with on the piano, kind of deciphering, figuring out for yourself, just know it. It is helpful to know, I think.
Yep.
At least gives you an idea of kind of where in the world that your voice lives.
Yep, I totally agree.
Is there any difference, Cynthia, from like auditioning for college resume versus a professional resume? I think the answer is yes. What is the difference?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like with high school resumes who are the students who are auditioning for college, they'll often put everything on, things you did in middle school, even things you maybe did as a kid back when you were doing children's theater. You put everything on that you've done in high school. You might put a lot of performances that you did with your choir, with your church, or all kinds of master classes that you did. You might just put all of that. When you graduate college, we tend to let a lot of that go. We can start letting go of the middle school. We can probably let go of a lot of the high school. By the time you enter the New York profession, it really is okay to have a pretty light resume. I think some people feel like they have to have a resume that's really packed full of stuff, and you don't. You really don't. And in fact, I've talked with a number of agents and casting folks over the years who there's something about finding the next big thing. There is appeal to a casting director or an agent sort of discovering a new talent. And so it's kind of exciting to be like, they really haven't done anything and I've discovered them and cast them in this and now their career is off and running. There can even be sort of an appeal to seeing a resume that isn't very padded and realizing that you're going to get to give them sort of their first big professional break. There's something really fun about that. So don't feel badly about having a resume that doesn't have a lot of credits on, especially as you're entering the industry. If you're young and entering the industry, you're not supposed to, it's not expected that you would have a lot of things on your resume.
Yeah. Even people who are older and entering the industry or like coming back after a break, it's like,
yeah,
you've lived your life. You've been doing stuff. It's all fine. Padding your resume, saying things that are not true, it's always going to come back to bite you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it always is.
Another thing that I like on resumes, and I know a lot of folks like, is if you've worked with someone that's well known in the industry, it's sometimes nice to list them. So if you've done a show that has a director or a music director or a choreographer, or if you've worked with a voice teacher or a dance instructor that's, that has been in the business for a while or that a lot of folks would know, it's sometimes nice to include those names somewhere on your resume so that, again, people can reach out and say, "Oh, I see that they worked with Chelsea Wilson. Oh, good, because I really need to know if this person can do such and such, and I'm not going to be able to have a chance to call them back." So they might give Chelsea Wilson a call because they know her from something else. So adding those names can sometimes be a nice little feature to add.
Yep, love that. Special skills? Let's just hit on
Ugh.
that.
There are some interesting special skills. Like, I think it's always helpful to know things like if you're a tumbler, you'll see shows where someone will do a backflip or a
aerial work, like water for elephants right now. Like they're doing all of these things. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Like some people have some circus training, some people have stunt training. Maybe they've done some like sword fight training. They can tumble. They've got some kind of acrobatic training. All of that is really interesting. If you play an instrument, that's always really interesting. And I try to always advise people with the instruments to be fairly accurate. If you're a beginner guitar player, I like people to fess up about that. That still might be really useful. There are a lot of times when you just need someone to be able to play some basic chords to get the job done. But, if you're an advanced guitar player, I like then to see guitar parentheses 8 years or advanced guitar player or something, to kind of give us an idea
Yep.
of how long you've played an instrument or how proficient you are at that instrument. Here's what I really personally, this is just me, this is just my opinion. I don't need to see your skill set when it comes to burping.
Oh my gosh.
And you would be surprised
I don't need to see
how often we will see, like, can burp the alphabet, can burp happy birthday, can burp on cue, can burp for a certain length of time, like can do a 5-second burp.
Seriously, all of this on burping.
So many different forms of burping skills will show up on that special skills area. And I've never quite understood that, but it's hanging firm. I've seen burps on resumes for 30 years now, and it doesn't seem like it's slowing down. But I would recommend just thinking a little more creatively and perhaps with just I like to keep the special skills a little classy.
Yeah, you can maybe let the burping go.
Maybe let the burping go.
Wow.
I've never asked someone to demonstrate the burp. However, I did ask someone recently to demonstrate their Jennifer Coolidge impression, which, by the way, was really good. So that was kind of fun. Like if you do some impressions or something, that can be kind of fun. I think special skills is a fun way to highlight something interesting about yourself that we would never know otherwise, in addition to actual special skills that might be able to be utilized in a show, like instruments or acrobatics or tumbling or things like that. But make sure you're ready to demonstrate it, and make sure that you demonstrate it at a very high level, and make sure that that is really how you want to represent yourself. Because it's okay to not have a lot of special skills. It's okay to not have a long list. Don't feel like you got to add burps to that just to fill it out a little more.
Yeah, you don't need to pad that section either. Well, that's really helpful, Cynthia. I really appreciate hearing what to include on a resume, what not to, and keep it simple, specifically on a website, on a resume. You are actually in control of that narrative, whatever you're putting out there online. And so be conscious of that. Be conscious of what you're allowing to be seen. The one thing I will say about social media, and again, if you want to hear more about our conversation about just online presence in general, and we do talk a lot about social media in episode 16, if you go back to that. But if you're active on social media and it does feel like a good representation of you and like stuff that you do and things you're passionate about, and there's clips of you performing and stuff on there, include links to that on your website. Absolutely. And if it's not a place you want to be found, then set that profile on private and don't link to it. That's fine too. That's totally fine too. But just again, you're in charge of what goes out there online, and take initiative so that you're showing up how you want to be seen.
Yeah. And let me add one last thing when it comes to that is with resumes, and I would argue with websites too. One of the points is for it to be very easily and quickly digested. So make both your website and your resume really clean, really clear, really easy to read, really easy to skim and gain that information quickly. So some resumes will have so much fancy formatting that I struggle even to find where are the character names of the shows they've been in. There's just too much stuff around it. Keep it really simple so that someone can glance at your resume and gather a whole bunch of information really quickly, really easily. And then I just implore all of you to proofread for your life. Make that resume really pristine. Make sure all your margins line up and your spelling is correct. Spell people's names correctly, please. Spell your character names correctly. Spell your show titles correctly. You'd be amazed how often I see spelling errors in a character name or in the name of the director or the name of the choreographer. I know Andy Blankenbuehler is a hard name to spell, but let's make sure we spell it correctly. We know these folks. And so you want to make sure you give them respect by spelling their names correctly, and have a friend proofread. Just make sure it looks really clean, really neat, and nice and easy to read.
Awesome. I hope that this gives people some easy inspiration and a very easy checklist for showing up online, having something on a website so that people can find you and recommend you for some jobs. Wouldn't that be great? Yes. Guess it would.
Yes.
Thanks, Cynthia. This was fun.
Thanks, Chelsea.
If you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot and tag us on Instagram at B-Way Vocal Coach. Share this episode with a friend and consider leaving us a review. It helps more listeners like you find our show. We would greatly appreciate it. And if you're ready to take your next step but aren't entirely sure what that should be, then take our quiz. We'll strategize with you to outline a roadmap to your unique goals. Visit bwayvocalcoach.com/take the quiz. We can't wait to hear your story and help you take the next step in your career.